things feel very dark right now. If you're going through it right now, it may feel like this is definitive. This will never change. We've tried everything. Maybe this is us. Maybe this is just who we are. But in so many cases, what feels final it may be that you're just stuck in a pattern that neither of you fully understand yet. I don't mean to diminish what you're going through. You may ultimately decide you want to divorce. But my hope for people coming through discernment counseling is I wouldn't want them to make a permanent decision about their relationship in the middle of their deepest pain without first knowing what clarity looks like for them.
Welcome to the Divorce Discussions Podcast, where professionals share practical guidance to help you move through divorce with clarity and confidence. Let's get into the discussion. There you are. You've been lying awake, running the same question on loop. Should I stay or should I go? Some days you're sure it's over, and then other days you think maybe there's something still worth fighting for. And the worst part is you're starting not to trust your own answers anymore. If that's where you are, you came to the right episode. Welcome to Divorce Discussions. I'm Angie Weber, the director of the Divorce Support Collective, where we are on a mission to reimagine the process of divorce from contemplation to thriving post-decree. And today I'm so excited to be sitting down with Chip Neuenschwander, a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of Wyzetta Counseling right here in Minnesota. Chip is trained in emotional focused therapy and discernment counseling, and he specializes in working with couples who are exactly in that place, stuck between staying and leaving. By the end of this conversation, I think you're going to understand why discernment counseling is different from the traditional couple therapy and why that distinction matters so much. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Chip.
Angie, it is such a delight to be here. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Oh, that's so good to hear. And I can't wait for what you're about to share with our listeners because you were kind enough to do a webinar about a year or so ago for the Divorce Support Collective. And so for those who are just finding out about us or just discovering this podcast, I am so excited for them to all hear the amazing just advice and thoughts you have on this because, again, it's got to start somewhere, right? And a lot of couples are starting with like, this isn't really working, but should we continue fighting for a marriage or should we, get divorced? What's the right choice? And that's a really big question to ask. And that's where discernment counseling really comes in. So I think we should probably start there with you just describing what is discernment counseling and why is that different than the traditional couples therapy?
Yeah, that is a super question, and you're spot on. This is a real struggle that a lot of people wrestle with. Should I stay in this marriage? It's kind of yucky, but then it seems scary to leave, and all sorts of reasons keep me in it. And so I'm so grateful for discernment counseling and what it can offer for so many couples. So it's short term. It's not built to go on and on and on. It's a structured process, so you know what you're getting when you come in. And it's designed specifically for couples where one partner is leaning toward divorce. They're leaning out, and the other partner wants to preserve the relationship. So it's not traditional couples therapy at all. In couples therapy, the foundation, the bedrock is that both of you are open to exploring and hopefully resolving the challenges in your relationship. And that Angie, that takes a whole lot of work. It takes a lot of work from both spouses, but it's good work when it fosters connection. It can be the very best kind of work. But in discernment counseling, one of you isn't ready for that yet. You're not trying to fix the problems that create the pain for both of you. You aren't trying to change the dance that you both find yourself stuck in, that you go round and round and round. You're just trying to, as a therapist, I'm just trying to help the couple gain a sense of clarity and decision. And it's this: should we try to restore this relationship or should we move towards separation? And we do that in about 1 to 5 sessions. And it's just a good place to determine whether there's enough there that you'd be willing to try to repair the relationship.
I love that distinction because you're right. I mean, someone who's gone through marriage therapy for quite a while, yes, it is a lot of hard work, and we were both, trying to lean in. But you are really
Yeah.
saying, like, I love the distinction that you made of like it's one person leaning in and one person leading out. But how does that work in these types of counseling sessions when maybe you have the husband or wife who's like, no, I'm done, and then the other one is saying, no, wait, I
Mhm.
want to make sure this is the actual right decision? I mean, that must be really hard.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it's designed for. I mean, all cards on the table. When I first started out helping couples, they would come in that position, and I would kind of shrug my shoulders, not really, but I would be like, "Well, what do you guys want me to do? Do you want to end it, or do you want to stay together?" I didn't know what to do when you had a mixed agenda, and that's exactly what discernment counseling is built for, to live in this place of yuck, where one person wants one thing and one person wants another thing.
Yeah, you're kind of in that messy middle part, right? And I love how at the beginning you weren't super, didn't know what to do. And now you're like, I'm going to fully lean in and I want to help these couples. Like, what made you so passionate about the discernment work?
Well, you're right. I do have a passion for people who are in this place. One, it's a part of my own personal story, but two, it's really an underserved area in many ways. You have so many relationships, so many people are thinking about like what going with this. They feel very hurt, they feel alone, they feel ignored, and they may not be ready for couples therapy. My first hope for everybody is hopefully we can get you in before it gets to that point, and we can help you with couples therapy. But if one partner just isn't ready for that, I'd hate to just say, well, your next stop is a family law attorney.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just because I know you, Chip, and I've heard you speak before, I want to make it really clear to our listeners here, though, because there might be some people like, wait a minute. Okay, yep, we are struggling with the should I stay or should I go? And if we go
Right.
see someone like Chip, he is going to tell us if we should get a divorce or not.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
a
want you
good
to clarify
distinction.
that that's not what you do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm sure if you found somebody who did that for you, you could get them for a big discount. That's called a friend. And you have to be careful of those two because those can, like, sometimes friends are well-meaning, but they're like, yeah, you go, girlfriend, get out of there. Which may or may not be the right kind of input. It's really not about that. It's helping you both slow down. And it's very thoughtful and very intentional. It's very curious. So rather than push my agenda on you, that's not what it's about. It's about giving you the chance to slow down and see what does clarity actually look like. And it could mean that you do want to try to work on the relationship with certain caveats, or it could mean that you are going to be heading towards divorce or separation. Either way, it's not a failure in terms of divorce, in terms of discernment counseling. The failure would be if we didn't give you that sense of clarity and kind of parting the fog a little bit that can feel so confusing.
Mm, great. Now, if we do have a listener who is like, yeah, I want to stay in the marriage and
Yeah.
I'm leaning in and my spouse is really the one leading out, how should they even bring up this conversation of discernment counseling to the person who's leaning out?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a question. So I'll get a lot of phone calls from the person who's leaning in, and you're right. They get nervous about bringing it up to their leaning out spouse because they don't want to frighten them away. And I mean, if the person's leaning out they've still got one toe in the marriage, they're probably open to hearing what it is that you're thinking, and then they can make their own decision. I can only guess at what I would do if I were in their shoes, but it might be something like I've heard about this thing called discernment counseling. It's not about pushing you towards a relationship or trying to work on our problems. It's really just about trying to give us both clarity. And if you're interested, I'd like to get do a consultation call, see if it's the right fit for us. But yeah, you're exactly right. For the leaning in spouse, you're kind of walking a tightrope. And on one side of the tightrope, it's like trying too hard. Oops, there was too much energy in my voice. And on the other side, you get hurt and you pull all the way back. And that's not the impression you want to give either. You're just in a really tough spot.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you even just giving like that example type of conversation they can have because again, if you know that your spouse is leaning out, if the word divorce has already been brought up a ton or they're, maybe separated already at this point and they just haven't finalized if they're going to go through with the divorce, they could be really fearful that yes, this is going to push them away or how do I approach it? So, of course, we need to approach our spouses with this conversation. If you're in that spot with your, you know your relationship best. So you're going to know how to talk to them. But I think even just a little bit of guidance from you there was really great. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. Um, Now, what about the one who they come to discernment counseling and the one is trying, the one who's leaning out is trying, but then they're kind of starting to feel a little bit stuck in the relationship. How do you kind of help them move forward in this process if they're still being bogged down with the decision?
Right, right. And that definitely is a place. I mean, it's seldom that somebody, I mean, it does happen sometimes where somebody just comes straight to the place where they're like, "Hey, I think I'd like a divorce today." And the other person is like, "Yeah, me too. Isn't that amazing?" Usually there's a whole lot of considerations on the table, and it's very difficult to be able to navigate that place. So, for somebody who feels stuck in indecision, I just want, if that's you, I just want to say that's very, very common. And it's an incredibly hard place to be. I remember, Angie, when I was a little kid, my dad, he loved chemicals and parts and things, and he had me hold a little bit of mercury in my hand. I don't know if I'd recommend this. I don't know if it's bad for you, but I just remember it just like slipped away from me, and it was impossible to ask me to hold it. And I think for somebody who is trying to say, should I stay? Should I go? I feel really stuck. It can feel like that. Like it feels like a teeter totter that won't behave. One day you feel like this, and then one day you feel like that. And you're torn in different directions. And so when that happens, when you feel that internal tug of war, my job is to go alongside of you. So in discernment counseling, I'll meet with both of you, both spouses for a little while in the beginning, and then I meet with both of you one on one. And so if you're the leaning out spouse, what I want to do, my job is not to push you toward staying or leaving. It's really about slowing down in that place and listening more carefully to both sides of that internal conflict inside of you where you feel so stuck. And I'm very curious, like what's led you to this point? What have you tried so far that hasn't worked? What would you need to see to consider working on the relationship? So I want to know about that tug of war they have. I also want to know about, different clients will describe it as like this dance or tilt-a-whirl or hamster wheel they get on. And they basically have the same arguments, but just with slightly different content with their spouse over and over again. And I want to know about that. I remember when I was going to an amusement park and getting on one of those twirly rides, and it like I was locked in, I couldn't get off, and it just went round and round. And leaning out spouses will convey something that feels like this horrible merry-go-round they can't get off of. They get this clear message for a lot of them. Hey, my partner, they shut down. They don't want to hear from me, and then I hear that from them and how painful that is, and I want to know what happens next. What do you experience when the dance keeps going over and over again? What does that look like for you? What happens for you when you get that painful message that your spouse doesn't want to hear from you, or that you're being a burden, or that you're not measuring up? What do you do then? Do you get louder, or do you get quieter? Do you shut down? And so I really want to look at what does their pattern look like for them on their end. And so the goal isn't to push them one way or the other. It's clarity and confidence.
Yeah, and again, I'm just so glad this keeps getting brought up too, that it's not that you have a magic ball, crystal ball
Right.
chip that you're going to tell them this is exactly what you guys should do for the best situation. It really is still up to them. And so I do encourage the listeners here who are the ones maybe leaning in and thinking, okay, how am I going to approach this? What other avenues can we, make sure that we go down before making this big decision? Like, this is a great episode to share with them too, with your partner of, hey, I know you're kind of more leaning out, but this could be something because again, you're coming to it with curiosity. You're not coming to it with judgment or with the answers. You're just really helping them lead to the decision. Now, One question I wanted to ask Chip is typically in the process, I mean, when should they start looking at discernment counseling? Is this that, hey, we've been separated for 6 months, or is it as early as like, they've thrown out the divorce word a couple times, and I think we really need to kind of stop it as soon as we can or make the decision sooner rather than later? Like, when is a good time for them to look into this type of counseling?
Yeah, that's a great question. For if both of you, if I'm talking to both of you and both of you are saying, I don't like this and I really do want the other person to understand what my hurt feels like. I do want them to stop hurting me, and I want, there's still in something inside me to try. My first preference is couples therapy. That is to say, good couples therapy. My personal preference, I'm an emotionally focused therapist. And so there's different modalities out there of people who practice couples therapy. My 2 cents is I'd love to be able to understand what it is that your pattern looks like in a non-threatening way, just very curious, but then also helping you to say things in the therapy room that is very hard to say outside of the therapy room. Because if I just give you a whole bunch of homework assignments and say, now go away, do these things, that's very fair. I mean, it's not fair to ask you to do something you haven't already done in the session. So in terms of like what's the right timing for discernment counseling, it would be legitimately when one of you is saying, I'm really leaning very strongly towards divorce, and the thought of couples therapy just turns my stomach in knots. And no offense, but it just kind of makes me gag a little bit thinking even trying to work on these problems, but I still have some hesitation about divorce. Maybe it's about our kids, or maybe I'm just not ready to go to that place yet, or maybe it just still feels really fuzzy. I just can't keep doing this like we've been doing it. It just hurts too much. So I think if you talk to a good couples therapist or a good discernment counselor, they can help give you some input. And I know other discernment counselors, we're pretty much in agreement. We don't want to push it on you if you don't want it. Otherwise, it won't work. We do consult calls where we'll say, I think maybe, I mean, you can try it, but I think maybe this might be a better fit for you or whatever. And you can just talk to whoever if there's somebody you've come across who's recommended, or, you find them online, and just get a sense for if it feels like a good fit. But don't be afraid to ask your discernment counselor questions too, like how long have you been doing this? How many couples have you worked with? Whatever would help you feel at peace that they're gonna be a good kind of guide or kind of co-traveler as you go through the next month with this person.
Yeah, again, great point bringing up too. I mean, and that's why at the Divorce Support Collective, we don't just have one person per profession in our membership for our professional members, because you're already going through such a difficult time and it's so emotional. We want to make sure that people are finding the right fit, and you're really encouraging people to advocate for themselves too, of like, hey, kind of in a sense, date around to your
Right,
therapist or
right,
your
yeah,
counselor or
yeah,
your discernment therapist, to make sure it's a good fit, because that makes a huge difference, especially when you have to be vulnerable and talk about
right,
things like emotions and all of
yeah.
that.
Angie, that is such a good point. And usually, like, people are like, how do I know? And I'm like, you pretty much know. Like within the first like 20 seconds, you kind of know if this person is going to be a good fit for us.
Mm.
You want to listen to that feeling in your tummy, that feeling in your stomach that says, oh, I don't like this, or yeah, this feels, because we've just had enough outcomes, like looking at outcomes of therapy. One of the big things is, did your therapist get you? Did you feel like you had a good connection with them, with their strong trust? Were they really aligned with you? And could you trust them? So that's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and I know like from my personal experience too, like there were points that I had a therapist or like even our marriage therapist, we went and saw them, for a good length of time. And then it kind of got to the point where we were like, I feel like our time is kind of run with this therapist. Like it's not really necessarily working right now, but with you, it's only 5 or 6 sessions that they're going through. And so you don't have to give me exact numbers or anything, but like, would you say like there's a good portion of people who do have a lot of clarity after? And what if they don't still know what to do after those 5 or 6 sessions?
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is short term, so it's limited 1 to 5 sessions, and then some people hear five and they're like, ah. And I said, well, the five is really it's intended to be a kindness. It's not intended to kick you out. It's just that you won't be in this waiting room forever. One way or another, you're going to be able to move on to whatever that next thing is if this is the time for you. So there are three paths that we offer as a part of the paradigm of discernment counseling. Path one is the status quo. And some couples will choose it. That means nothing changes. We don't seek divorce. We don't go to couples therapy. We just try to do it on our own. And if that's what you choose, I mean, for a couple of couples, that's just what they choose. And then the option two, path two, is divorce. That's a legal separation to a relational problem you've been having. It's hard. It's really, really hard. But for some couples, they say this is what we've decided to do. And then the path three is reconciliation, but with a caveat. Reconciliation for a limited time. And we usually say 6 months. And 6 months is kind of like we're really going to put our effort into this. We're going to come up with personal agendas for change. So that you'll come armed with that when you go into couples therapy. So you're not just like, what do we do now? So yeah, it's built to be short term. It's built to give you clarity. There are a few people. Usually, if somebody's dissatisfied with discernment counseling, usually there's not a clear understanding of what it's about. Like one spouse is like, "Hey, you didn't convince them hard enough to stay in the marriage," and you say, "Well, it's not really what it's about. It's about helping them find the decision that's right for them." Or that's usually when they don't fully understand what it's trying to offer. But most people, and it's been around long enough that the University of Minnesota has done some studies, and there have been other studies that have shown that it's been very helpful for a lot of couples, regardless of the path they choose. We just noticed some correlations, it sounds like, between those who are able either to divorce well and please don't quote me out of context on this. I'm just remembering some study that I read about 3 years ago, but it seems like there's a good, Angie, it might be something in the mix of also the people who pursue discernment counseling, who are trying to be thoughtful, that they also want to be thoughtful when they try to reconcile or if they try to divorce. It may not necessarily be like discernment counseling means one thing or the other. It's just that we're finding some similarities.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. And we won't hold you to the
Okay,
exact study or anything. So don't worry about it. Obviously, listeners, you can go do some research too. Obviously,
right,
the U of M
right.
has a lot of great research out there, and they do all those kinds of things. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, Chip, and I'm not sure if all discernment counselors are trained in this, but one other aspect that you bring to it is the emotional focus therapy. So can you explain to the listeners a little bit more about what that's all about and why it's important in your practice?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great modalities. There's different modalities that couples therapists will use. My personal 2 cents, it's good to have something because if you are working with couples, there's a lot of data points flying at you, and you're only human. And so it's good that especially if you have a couple, they start getting into an argument in your office, and they're getting dysregulated. You need to, as a counselor, you need to know, what do I do next? Where do I go from here? You need to have a very clear idea. And one of the things with EFTers, emotionally focused therapists, we remind ourselves to stay on mission, because a lot of things can take us off of our mission, but we are very clear on what we're trying to help the couple to do. So for emotionally focused therapy, it's not the problems that you're having in marriage. It's not primarily because of poor communication skills or a lack of any effort on your part. I don't view it that way. Really, it's a struggle because you get caught in rigid emotional patterns that threaten your sense of connection and safety with each other. Because emotionally focused therapy is really an attachment-based therapy. Attachment weaves its way through everything we do in EFT. So when couples get to a place of distance without realizing what's happening, and in a very short amount of time, they start doing things that scare the other person, even though you long to hear just wonderful reassurances like, "Am I important to you? Will you be there for me when I need you? If I call for you, will you come to me?" When those needs that we all have, men and women, young and old, when we all have those, when they go unmet repeatedly, couples start to develop these kind of protective things that they do. And sometimes it's things we developed when we were little kids. One may start to pursue harder and get louder and say, "Hey, if you won't pay attention to me, I'm going to increase the volume. Maybe then you'll pay attention." the other may shut down. And so you hear a lot about like attachment, like anxious or avoidant. This is really baked into the what I think one of the things that makes EFT so effective is that it puts that in your patterns. So over time, whatever strategy you do, and I do it too, we all have it, our protective tendencies, they become kind of like that little Achilles heel, that hidden thing to us that we each do to contribute to the dance. And so couples will get stuck in this dance and they can't get out of it. Very wonderful people, very intelligent, very accomplished people. They find themselves stuck in this same thing over and over again. And when they try to repair, that can go sideways too. So after a while, your pursuer person, the person who turns up the volume, they may start to get discouraged and shut down, which then feels like a temporary relief to the withdrawer because they're like, oh, this doesn't feel so stressful. Yes, yes, like it's not so scary anymore to me. But just because the noise on the so your pursuer is the one who's going to sound the alarm. They see the danger and they're like, hey, danger, 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 and they sound the alarm system. But if you unplug the alarm system, aka you tell your pursuer, hey, just try to start stuffing it, it doesn't it that's where it's just because the alarm isn't making noise, that doesn't mean there isn't distress in the relationship. It's just that that went down to the basement. And when things go down to the basement, they start pumping iron because there's weights down there, and then they come up and they have bigger muscles. So divorce through this lens, through emotionally focused therapy, it's often less about incompatibility or irreconcilable differences, but it's more about a breakdown in the emotional bond that neither of you is knows how to repair that.
Mm. Mm. That was so insightful, and I love all of your analogies too, because you're right. Like sounding the alarm, getting
Yeah,
louder. I mean, yeah, pumping the iron and just coming up even
right.
stronger when we try to suppress stuff is
Yeah.
yes, all
Well,
really
I'll
good
tell you,
things.
Angie,
Yeah.
with EFT, it's really the emotionally focused therapy, and a lot of men are like, don't do emotions. But what men can do a lot of times is imagery. Like you have somebody who comes out of the military, and then he's able to talk about being a helicopter pilot, and he's like, I don't have my co-pilot. I'm really, we got to land this mission. And so then you go with them. That's their emotion speaking. And so there's a lot of imagery. Imagery is very powerful for couples. So, anyway, that's another episode. That's let's geek out about counseling on another episode.
Yeah, part two, right? Yes, I find it so fascinating, and I know that not everyone is open to the thought of counseling. Which again, I'm glad that you shared such good information and such good viewpoints of discernment counseling. So for that listener right now who's saying, "Well, my spouse would never go to counseling," I've tried to bring it up before, like knowing that this is not, it's still counseling. It's just a little bit of a different way. It's not couples therapy where we're going to sit down and, say, be there for a year and a half trying to figure this out. You really have a mission, as you said, and you use, your own tools in your toolbox of making sure that you're staying online with that mission, especially when the couples get dysregulated, which is so easy to do, especially when there's such tension or underlying issues that may possibly be leading to divorce. Now, Chip,
Yeah,
one of the reasons that I really shared with you why I wanted you to be on this podcast and really help us kick it off is because divorce has really three sides to it. It has the financial side, the legal side, and then a big portion is that emotional side. So it's that 80% of divorce is emotional. And obviously, for people listening to this podcast right now are probably the ones who are looking, into divorce, or maybe they're already going through the process, or they're just tuning in because they've already gone through it and they want some support and education. But what would you say to, as far as the emotional side, because it can be so overwhelming for people, do you have any good tips on how to get through some of those really rough days emotionally?
yeah, that is so hard. Working in this space and kind of volunteering in this space too, it will rock your world going through a divorce. And it affects different people differently. Some people they experience pain all through their marriage, and then for them maybe divorce feels like a relief, and they're like, "That's kind of weird. I feel relieved." Some people, so, to them, divorce is this horrible new reality. They'll describe it as like a nightmare they can't wake up from. This should be somebody else's reality, not mine. And there's a whole, and while you are bleeding, you still have to keep going. I think of like these, like I don't know if you've ever watched these Rambo films. Like the guy's indestructible. He'll take a bullet and he'll like stitch himself up and then he'll keep fighting. And you kind of feel like that sometimes when you are going through something like this, especially if you have kids. You like rush into the bathroom, you weep for like a minute or two, you splash water in your face, and then you have to be brave mom or dad again. You walk out like, you don't want to bring them down. And it is really, really hard. We've done studies. I say we, I haven't, but academics and other people have done studies of what it's like to go through something really, really painful. And it can be something that levels you. It can be something that can be isolating potentially. But we've also studied people who have been able to go through something really, really hard where you think it's going to flatten you, and nobody's more surprised than when you are like, hey, I'm breathing again. I didn't know I could still do that. Some big things. Me being an attachment guy, obviously you can see where I'm going. I'm such a big believer in relationships. Um, it is much, much easier to have somebody help you kind of be there with you to co-regulate with you rather than for you to just do it on your own. So for some people, they find support groups like divorce care is one I recommend to a lot of people. That's a 13-week program. It's free and it's held all over the nation. So you can just Google divorce care. And it's just divorced people coming together to talk about their ouch. But then some people will seek out therapy. They'll seek out friends. And then also just be gracious to yourself. If it's a nice day outside, maybe treat yourself to a walk. Find out little opportunities to like maybe you just need to like realize you can only operate at 40% today, and you're going to have to be okay with that at least for now. So you're not going to get any judgment from me for not healing faster than you want to, even though I know it's hard and it's frustrating. But most people do get through this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I appreciate your little caveat at the end. Like, I'm not going to judge you for not healing on a certain timeline. I think when we go through any kind of hurt,
Right.
it's really easy to want to be like, can I just be over this now? Because
Yeah.
sitting
Yeah.
in the feels and feeling all the feels is really hard some
Right.
days. And
Right.
everyone, yes, is going to have a different healing journey with this. And of course, getting, that support. Thank you for sharing that resource with our listeners here, is so important. And again, that's what we're all about at the Divorce Support Collective is that, we really want to make sure people understand that they can have this good support team around them as if they decide to go through divorce or even in the process of that contemplation stage. Maybe it goes back to reconciliation, but you can still have those people in your corner to help you guide you through that journey. And it's just so super important. And of course, friends are great. And also, I think sometimes bringing in the professionals is what we need sometimes because our friends are pretty emotionally involved in our relationship, maybe more than we want them to be sometimes. So, yes, this was absolutely fabulous, Chip. Thank you so, so much for just sharing all of this information, for sharing those extra little tips too on those hard days of emotions. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I hope this will be a little bit of encouragement to you to that if you're listening to this, it may be that you things feel very dark right now. If you're going through it right now, it may feel like this is definitive. This will never change. We've tried everything. Maybe this is us. Maybe this is just who we are. But in so many cases, what feels final it may be that you're just stuck in a pattern that neither of you fully understand yet. I don't mean to diminish what you're going through. You may ultimately decide you want to divorce. But my hope for people coming through discernment counseling is I wouldn't want them to make a permanent decision about their relationship in the middle of their deepest pain without first knowing what clarity looks like for them. Because I've seen it go both ways for couples. I've seen couples who felt completely hopeless come to understand their relationship in a new way. And then that understanding opened maybe even just a little crack, but opened the door to something they didn't know was there. And so that offered them a little bit of hope for reconciliation. And I've also seen some people come to a clear, grounded decision that they say, you know what, this is the time to separate. And they're not reacting. It's not this knee jerk reaction. They're being thoughtful about it, and they want to have integrity about it, especially because they want to value the person they've been married to, their children, and all the other considerations. So both outcomes can be healthy when you're coming from a sense of like, well, clarity, not just this fuzzy place where you're like, I don't know what end is up.
Yeah, yeah, and you just kind of feel like you're walking around, in the dark and you're like, I'm not really sure what's going on right now, but we'll just get up
Right.
and try again tomorrow, and then you feel the same. So, thank you again so much, Chip, for joining us and sharing all of this. Of course, listeners, if you're in the Minnesota area and you're in this constant contemplation stage, I really encourage you to reach out to Chip, have that free consult, just see where this could possibly lead and how this could help. If you are not in Minnesota, no worries, because Chip has an amazing YouTube channel, and that is also going to be in the show notes, so you can go check him out there and learn some little tidbits on there as well. So again, thank you, Chip, for joining us. Listeners, thanks for sticking around, and we will see you next time on the next discussion. Thank you for listening to the Divorce Discussions podcast. If this was helpful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next conversation. Visit thedivorcesupportcollective.com to explore resources and connect with our professionals. Until the next discussion, remember, you don't have to navigate this alone.